Hi everyone and welcome to our joint webinar with ILTA. My name is Blarina Halili and I lead product marketing here at Prospera. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you the following speakers to our webinar. We have Tina Harkins, who is the Director of Solutions Consultant at Prospera. We have Keith Lipman, the CEO and co-founder of Prospera, and myself, which I already introduced. Before we start with the whole webinar, I quickly wanted to go over through the agenda and some housekeeping rules. We'll continue to discuss about Microsoft Teams challenges as provided by Keith Lipman, as well as some CAM overview and benefits, followed by a CAM demo by Tina. In the end, we have provided a couple of minutes for a Q&A, about 15 minutes or so. So you can type any questions that you have in the chat area. By default, all participants will be muted and we will be sending emails to address any unanswered questions. Just to let you know that today we'll also have a poll question, so you can follow the link in the chat area to answer that. Before we move on, I just quickly want to share my screen so you'll be able to see the content. So just give me a second. Yes. So before we continue, let's talk about Microsoft Teams. What we have seen in the past year is a tremendous growth of Microsoft Teams and the daily users. If we go back to November of 2019, we will see that Teams had only 20 million daily active users. And today, as we're speaking, there are 115,000 million users. So that's like more than 400% growth. So what has spurred this growth is obviously the sudden shift to remote work. This also means that a lot of the law firms and organizations have had to quickly adopt and make sure that they are deploying Microsoft Teams accordingly. We are curious to hear about your own Microsoft Teams experience and where you are in your Microsoft Teams journey. So please follow the link in the chat area, or you can simply scan the QR code here to answer our quick poll question. I'll give you a couple of seconds to deal with that, and then we can continue with Keith.
And I assume we've also put it in the Q&A section for anybody who wants to just click off the survey link.
Yes.
All right.
Great. Well, Keith, I think we're ready to move on to your part. So can you tell us a little bit more?
All right. So let's talk. We've seen, as Valerian talked about, the great adoption of Teams. We've seen in the legal industry that everybody is, we talk to probably every day. We talk to different firms who are in the middle of trying to figure out how to deploy Teams. But I think it raises many similar issues that you probably have seen with your document management systems and transaction management, litigation management, whatever the different systems are, or your file shares, which is, how are we going to basically prevent collaboration chaos, right? Which is data goes everywhere. We have massive sprawl. We have no idea what to do with it. So we have a basic knowledge management problem where the users don't know where they can find information about this matter or this project or some committee. And then the risk management team in trying to kind of satisfy, the needs for, for file transfer, for the ability to report on who has access to data, for litigation support, litigation hold, and other risk management needs. They don't know where the data is. And so what happens is people spend lots of time trying to spelunk. The risk management team spend time trying to go, what is this about? And calling people saying, I see you're the author of this document, or you created this channel, or you created this team. Can you tell me what's going on here? Instead of actually working on risk management. And so this is what kind of the fundamental tension with any collaboration system we have to do. And Microsoft Teams with Teams and Teams and channels further does that. Next slide. So when you start thinking of this, okay, so what is our so when we talk to clients all the time, what we see from the kind of the first basic thing is people are just trying to figure out, how do I use this thing? And what we mean by that is channel, so structure, right? What's the structure that we're going to use? In other words, should we have a channel per matter or should it be a team per matter? We recommend team per matter generally, but then once we create a design, well, people ask us all the time, what can we do with the general channel? Well, you're stuck with it. You can't get rid of it. Or what do I do about private channels? And these are kind of constant issues that people kind of start thinking through. Then comes into, okay, how do I integrate it with my DMS? How do I make sure that the data flows? How do I deal with governance and access management? In other words, one of the things with Teams, because you're dealing with chat and very intimate communication, most people do not want to roll this out that everybody in the firm has access to the chat. Instead, you're going to look at an idea that you're going to control, it's going to be more of a need to know or pessimistic security model. But then how do we make sure that the data is governed well, that we're getting the data in there correctly and going across? And then, of course, can we satisfy our risk compliance needs? Next slide. So this is where we think CAM comes in. So CAM, is a system, it is designed for multiple collaboration systems. So it already supports iManage and that documents your DMS. It also goes into HighQ. It works with your ethical wall systems. And it really does kind of three different things. It helps with your, in essence, matter initiation, project initiation, new business intake, whatever you want to call it. And that can either be done from a systems approach, right? So in other words, it could be your practice management system, your e-billing system if you're a legal department, or a time and billing, or it could be your new, your current new matter intake workflow system where you can basically provision stuff. Or we talk to many firms who say, I don't want to change that yet. I want to just simply have a human workflow to request a team or a channel. What we do then is we basically take it, we go basically have a set of templates for that can compose both the files, you can have folder structures in the files tab. You can have channel, different channels templated, so you can enable processes like, I want to do a litigation matter and I want to share it with I want to share it with both co-counsel and my client and have data sharing and have private channels through security. We solve the problem of how do we deal with, putting client matter around the team or the channel and understanding the context. How do we deal with basically adoption? In other words, if people, if we decide to create lots of channels in the first place and we realize that people are only using 2 of them, how do we get rid of them? How do we change the templates to make sure it does? Integrating the DMS, and then finally having a directory so you can actually do the lookups. Once it gets through the systems, it's really then how do we make sure that we have all the governance layers to make sure that you can actually transfer it, put a litigation hold, dispose of it, and make sure that data, you know what the data is about. Next slide. So that's why we kind of say, from a very simple perspective, CAM really combines both the process and governance side. And by pairing the two together, we really get a stronger solution that enables you to empower digital transformation with teams, but make sure you can follow all the requirements that you have from clients. Next slide. So this is where I kind of want to drill down in adoption management and just say, if you don't get people to adopt tools effectively, and which is agreeing on a shared way of collaborating on something and supporting that as a process instead of saying, here's stuff, right? Do whatever you want to do, here's stuff. You get everybody kind of going crazy and picking a particular different, creating whole different processes, and everybody creates, each lawyer does their own thing, and each person working on the team wants to do their own thing. Instead, part of this is to say, hey, we're going to have a process in order to deliver this type of matter, which is going to be defined in a collection of teams, channels, tabs, folder structures, etc., and support that through it and make sure that people use it and put data in the right place. And this is really, really critical in anything in getting teams, someone to adopt and use Teams correctly. Next slide. But you also need to deal with the idea that security nowadays is got to be, in essence, from our perspective, you're really looking at a world of zero trust, right? What zero trust security underneath means is that you only have access that you should have access to. The classic use case, I think, is when I talk to law firms way back 20 years ago, it was like, oh, well, we do entertainment work. We don't want, the secretary in the New York office looking up that famous Stars, contracts. That wouldn't be appropriate. Well, really today, that kind of applies to a lot of things and really applies to this concept that we need to restrict access, because if the bad guys come in, we want to make sure that they have a limited play of things that they can get access to, which reduces the risk of the organization. And that is really a critical way, but you still need to then facilitate, how are we going to have people get access across matters? So end user driven and risk management driven. We also need to get basically teams to work with the DMS, right? Whether you use iManage or NetDocuments, this is, we spend more time having discussions around these issues, which is how do we get I've got my users are used to putting documents in the DMS. Well, okay, great. But what so we have to support how to publish to teams, but we also need to support how, if I create the documents in the DMS in the first place and I'm editing and versioning them and doing all the collaboration in them, because that's one of the great things about Teams is to do all this online collaboration. How do I bring the documents back? And one of the challenges that we continue to see, that's going to always exist, is that versioning in the document management system is radically different than versioning in Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online / Office 365. And those two are incompatible. So our view is that if you create documents in Teams, we want to create a URL to make anybody in the DMS aware of the document. And then basically when the matter is over or at a certain moment, move the data back. Next slide. So we cover that. Next slide, please. So on top of all that, we also now need to deal with how do we make sure that, when people leave the organization, that we are actually we're aware of what data they have access to, make sure they're not leaving with it, and also deal with the fact once they leave, one of the best practices is to go along and remove access across all those documents. And all of that kind of activity reporting and monitoring is really important and effective for things to manage access. And that's one of the key things that makes CAM very powerful, because we can do that not just across Teams, but we can bring that and combine it together with all of the systems that you use and give you that ability to do it across multiple systems to make sure that you're removing people's access where you need to. Next slide. We also help you make sure that all the data is aligned across systems. So one of the things is in aligning a document management system with Teams and SharePoint Online is to make sure that we have usernames are the same, we have metadata that's the same, all the client names are the same, all the data is the same, so we can easily move the documents. But it also enables us to do unified reporting, and that's why it's very important to have a unified approach to making sure that all the metadata you're using across the systems are the same. Next slide. Finally, today, clearly, while firms for years and years and years told us, hey, we never want to get rid of the data, that's changed, right? We really need an ability to actually get rid of data today, because it's a risk management issue that it needs to go away, and we need to keep what the things are around it. And having that policy and doing it across multiple systems is critical to making it work. Next slide. Finally, put in a litigation hold, and make sure that if something happens, you have a way of basically getting, tracking that content and putting on hold as you need it. And I think those are really the requirements around Teams. And let's just talk about a couple best practices, and we'll push right into the demo, because I'm sure everybody's tired of me talking. So from a perspective of our things, one of the biggest things that we see from clients is, first thing, the minimum necessary things to roll out Teams is basically, how do I provision it to make sure that people don't have, we have control of teams and channels, and you control when they're created, have integration with your current ethical wall system to basically enforce the appropriate ethical walls, and support moving documents. And those things are the minimum table stakes, kind of the minimum viable deployment requirements in order to make sure you comply with your basic risk management and security needs. And then you can get into more of the complexities of, well, how do I share? What's external sharing going to look like? How do I make sure I can do that reporting in DLP and eventually get rid of the data? And all of those things are most important, but first thing to do is what is critical at the beginning. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tina, who's going to actually show you what CAM can do to Teams and how we can manage the risk management side.
Okay, thanks, Keith. All right. It's interesting using Teams for essentially a webinar. The functionality is a little different. All right, so I'm going to start this demo from Teams as an end user so that you can see how Teams can help lawyers and organizations organize and structure their teams, and use Teams really as kind of the new lawyer desktop. Here I am in Teams, and you'll see that I have some teams that I'm a member of, and there's some consistency around the naming convention for the teams. they start with, like, say, the client matter ID, the matter name. I have a team for a particular client as well. And I have a folder structure that is structured and similar across the teams. So much like you can provision workspace templates or structures around your DMS workspaces, you can also provide that same structure across your teams. So I have a standardized convention here. Within the team, we have our posts where I can have all my conversations about the different aspects of the team. I have files, which shows me all of the files that are in SharePoint Online for this particular team. In the same way we can provision the channels in each team, we can also provision the folder structure of within the team, within the file. So these are the file folders that are in the SharePoint document library associated with the team. We can also, with CAM, you can surface the workspace for the team, whether it's iManage or NetDocuments. So I have easy access to all of my content that's in iManage. I can also see if I have a HighQ site for a particular team. I can have, or for a particular matter, I can see that and have easy access to that. We can, with CAM, we can also provision OneNotes or planners for the team so that you can have all of your notebooks, you can have your matter plan and task list within the team. So really it's kind of a one-stop shop for everything that is that a lawyer may need with regard to the matter. So access to documents, access to the DMS, access to HighQ and other third-party utilities, as well as all of the conversations around this. When you're provisioning teams, again, if you compare it to a workspace in a document management system, there is no workspace profile per se. There's no client matter or search for a profile. I can't right-click on a team and get information about the team. It's really just all I can see is the team name and the membership list. With CAM, we provide a CAM app for teams. And let me see if I can move this thing out of the way. That allows you to organize, find teams, and even request teams. So this shows me a directory of all of the teams that I have access to, that I'm a member of, right? So these are, I don't see teams that I'm not a member of. I don't see any private teams that I'm not a member of. These are only the teams that I have access to. From here, I can actually search for teams based on profile metadata. So when we provision the team through CAM into Microsoft Teams, we collect all of the same metadata that we can collect when we're provisioning workspaces. We can collect client and matter, and even things like practice and matter type and office. So then I have the ability to do essentially a profile search for a team. So if I want to find all teams for my Lego client, I can search for all of the teams for Lego, and then I can easily just click the hyperlink and it'll take me directly to that team within Teams. So I don't have to search for anything or run through the navigation to find anything. Additionally, any documents that are in the teams, and these are documents that reside in SharePoint, these are documents I have access to because I have access to the corresponding team where they're stored, the SharePoint site where they're stored. I can, again, search for documents based on some metadata, right? So I can do based on document type or name, or we can, improve this by including client and matter as well. When provisioning teams, there are a few ways to provision teams. There's an automated process that can be provisioned much like you do with your workspaces, where when the lawyer opens up a new matter, they can indicate whether or not they want a team that's created, and then through an automated process through scripting, we can then provision the team with the right template, the right naming convention for the team. The other way to do it is through what we call a request process. So if you have an existing matter and the lawyer decides they want a team, they can use a request process to request the team. This will present a form that they can fill out. They can select the client and the matter. Or in some cases, you're going to have teams for matters, but you're also going to have teams for other administrative or non-legal related matters. If you have administrative departments or you have practice areas that would want teams for collaboration on matter-related projects. But I can simply create, do a lookup on my, client, and then select a matter. I can select a template that I want to use, and these templates have folders or OneNotes in them. I can select from any number of templates for teams. I can add security, so who do I want to add to my team membership? So I can add a user. I can also allow guest users. So if your organization permits guest access into Teams, meaning outside parties, all I need to do is put in the email address and the name and then give them a permission. So I can add my membership, I can review my inputs, and then this can be sent for approval. So with Teams or the request workflow, you can have some situations where you want some approval process to be integrated with the workflow. In some cases, you may just allow people to create teams without having any approval. So maybe it's just an administrative or a practice area project team. It doesn't require approval, but maybe a client matter team does require approval. And I can just finish this, and this will get sent to the designated approver. The designated approver will get an email with a link, or they can actually go through the CAM app and see any teams out there for approval. So you can see here I have some that have been approved, some that have been waiting for approval, and if I'm a designated approver, I can view any approval requests from here, and I can also approve or reject the approval from here. So with the CAM app for Teams, we provide as much, not only end user access into Teams, but also administrative access for Teams. Okay, now switching over, just wake up my system here, to the administration of CAM. So this is the administrative UI for CAM, and CAM is a SaaS platform that allows organizations to provision, to secure, to manage, and govern all of the content across the organization, not just Teams, not just the document management system. You'll see here I have a directory of all the Matter content I have that's been provisioned through Teams or linked into, provisioned through CAM or linked into CAM. It's pretty easy for me to see where all the content lives just by looking at it. I can select any matter or search for a matter and view all of the content and where it lives. So in my organization, for this particular matter, I have a HighQ site, I have Umbria, I have a workspace in both NetDocuments and in iManage, I have a team. So I have all of this content that lives across my organization for this particular matter. I have insight into it from this administrative console. I can look at the metadata for the matter. So if I need to update any metadata on the matter and apply that metadata to the downstream system like iManage or NetDocuments or Teams, I can update it here. I can also view security for this particular matter. Who has access to the matter and what systems do they have access to it? And what level of access do they have? I can add or remove members from here as well. So most of this will be done through provisioning, and most of this will be done through integration with your ethical wall application so that the right people get access to the right content and the wrong people don't get access. But from here, if I need to see it or make some individual change, I can. In the same way we can provision matters to these systems, we can also provision users and groups. CAM integrates with the on-premise Active Directory or Azure AD to bring in all of your users and groups and provision them to those downstream systems like NetDocuments or iManage. We can keep groups in sync so that if a user is removed from a group in Active Directory or Azure AD, we can then remove that user from the group in NetDocuments or iManage. If the user is disabled in Active Directory or Azure AD, we can disable that user across all of the systems like iManage, NetDocuments, and HighQ. The approvals is the master approval list for all content, not just Teams. With CAM, not only can we provision or have request workflows and approval workflows for Teams, but we can also have it for OneDrive. So users can request a OneDrive be created. CAM can then manage that OneDrive. We can also have just administrative workspaces in either NetDocuments or iManage, or if you're in a corporate legal department where you don't have a practice management system, we can also provide a workflow so that end users can create workspaces in the DMS when they need to. With administration, this is where all of the configuration happens. And I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. The first thing is the template editor. Actually, the first thing will be the external system configuration. This is how you connect to those downstream or content systems. What we can do here is we connect to all of those systems through either an administrative or service account that's designated for that system, so that when we create content, we create a team, or CAM creates a team or creates a workspace, it's created on behalf of that administrative user or that service account. So the end user never owns their own stuff. They never own the workspace. They never own the team. They're just a member. The service account will own it. That way you don't run into trouble like with Teams. If you're an owner of a team, you can delete the team, you can delete all the content in the team, you can change the security on the team, and we really don't want end users doing that. To structure all of the content across the systems, you can use the template editor. These provide all of the templates for any of the systems that we use. So iManage, NetDocuments, Office 365, HighQ. I can view all of the templates. I'll just show an Office 365 template. If I want to look at the template structure, here are the channels. And these are the folder structure, the planner, OneNote, whatever it is that can be created underneath for that team. So when I provision a team using this template, all of these things will be created automatically. With Teams, especially where generally law firms and corporate legals have been using document management systems for years, and they have pretty well-defined structures for how documents should be organized within those workspaces. When it comes to Teams, it's a little bit different because so many other components can be accessed through Teams. Maybe organizing by document type isn't really the appropriate use of it. You could organize it by phases of a case, or by different aspects of what's going on in the matter. And then you can organize the folder structure and other aspects of it underneath it based on that document type. So there's going to be some vetting that goes on throughout the Teams deployment process where, as lawyers start to use it, they may really start to change the way that they're thinking about the organizational structure of their teams. So making adjustments to Teams over time is very important. So what we give you the ability to do is if, say, for instance, the practice comes back and says, we really want to add a new team or a new channel to all of our teams. We can add the channel through the template editor, and then we have an option to apply that channel to all previously created teams based off this template. So in this case, I have 40 teams that have already been created based off this litigation template for Teams. I can make that change and add any new channels or folders. I can update, metadata or security on any of the aspects of the template, and I can push those changes backwards to the previously created teams. We have this functionality for workspaces, for NetDocuments, and for iManage as well. So this is a feature that goes across multiple systems. So it's really important from an end user adoption perspective to be able to give the end users what they need and be able to make those adjustments over time. From a governance standpoint, we have something called the ETL Manager. And this allows you to create move content from Teams into iManage. This is something that you can configure on the administrative side so that you can set up some defaults for how you want that content to be moved. So if I want to add So from Office 365 to iManage, what we can do here is we can move the content or copy the content, I should say, copy the documents from Teams to iManage so that ultimately all of the documents will reside in their place of record, which would be the document management system. You can set the documents, you can bring them in as a shortcut. Keith alluded to this in his presentation, where rather than creating, bringing in documents all the time, what we can do is bring in a shortcut to the document, basically a URL shortcut that will then allow the end user to, always access the correct and final version of the current version of the document in Teams. And then when the matter's over, we can then replace those shortcuts with the actual document. So the document can be worked on in Teams during the life cycle of the matter, but then at some designated time or on matter close, we can then bring in the actual document into Teams so that, into the document management system so that its final resting place is there. And that can be done through what we call the ETL manager. And finally, with controls, we have a list. This is where we can do more advanced governance across content. So with ETL, we can allow the transfer of content back and forth between Teams and the document management system and the document management system and Teams. Just wake up my system here. If you need to do more broader, complex retention controls across all of the content based on a number of triggers, this is where you would do it. The Control Center allows for creating different types of controls, not just retention, but also security and legal hold. So I can actually create exclusion or inclusionary policies, or I can create litigation holds for content across multiple systems. So going back to the directory map that I originally showed you, where we have content all over the place, I can then apply retention or legal holds to that content no matter where it resides. So as long as CAM knows that there's a site in HighQ, there's some content in Teams, or content in iManage or NetDocuments, I can add all of these disparate systems into my legal hold. It will go out to all of those systems, locate where the content is, and then take action on it, either put it on the legal hold or secure it, or even doing more advanced retention. If I come back here and look at, say, a retention policy, where I have a variety of different triggers and actions. So as an example, after a few months after the matter closed, we can make everything read-only. We can consolidate all of the data. So take everything from HighQ, from Teams and SharePoint, or from OneDrive, and move it into the document management system. And then we can have even additional triggers for, closing, archiving the workspace or the content, or ultimately destroying the content. And this can also be done on an approval process. So you can just see from this brief demo that there's a lot we can do with CAM, from really the end-to-end solution for Teams provisioning and workspace and content management across all of the systems, from provisioning the content, securing the content, managing it during its life cycle, as well as setting the ultimate disposition of the content through CAM.
Great, well, thank you, Tina. Appreciate you showing the demo to everyone here. And I think we have a question that has come through, so I'd like to read it and making sure that we can answer it accordingly. Can you all hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. Well, the question that has come through is saying, what's the relationship between CAM and Milan for existing Milan customers?
So I don't know if, Keith, you wanted to take this, but essentially CAM really came out of a lot of the document management systems and a lot of content moving into the cloud. Existing Milan capabilities are being moved into CAM. We're almost feature complete with what's available in Milan today, available in CAM. What I would say is that for any of our existing Milan customers, it would be useful to have a conversation with you to find out what your goals are for either moving to the cloud, or do you have, if you want to, if you're deploying Teams today, we can introduce those aspects of CAM for you and help you start to manage and govern your CAM deployment or your Teams deployment.
I was gonna say, yeah, we already have customers who are buying CAM for Teams and staying with Milan on premises. They can be integrated easily. They can work together. And then if your long-term goal is to switch to another you can then eventually, as you move to the cloud or even stay on premise, you can move the functionality. There are certain features of CAM of Milan which were built to deal with certain limitations in iManage. In many cases, those may not be rebuilt because the current versions of iManage do them. So, actually provide comparable functionality. So this is just an area that you should have a conversation with us, but Milan continues on and we continue to develop it. We continue to add features. We're just working on a new release, an update release for it. So both products continue. One is being our on-premises solution and one being our cloud solution.
Great. Well, thank you, Tina, and thank you, Keith. I think that is the end of our questions that we received. For everyone who attended today's webinar, I'd like to thank you. Feel free to reach out to us if you want to continue the CAM conversation, but otherwise the recording will be sent to everyone. And with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye from me.